It's time for another Bible Thumping Wingnut Google Hangouting podcast with Matt Slick from carm.org. And now, here's your host, Andrew Rappaport.
Well, thank you very much for joining with us. This is another episode of the Bible Thumping Wingnut Hangout with Matt Slick on Sunday nights. We're glad to have you with us. I am Andrew Rappaport from Striving for Eternity, filling in for the big shoes of the big man, Tim, the Bible Thumping Wingnut. Tonight, we're going to have an open hangout for the most part, but we are going to somewhat limit it to a topic. And with that, the topic tonight will be, do homosexuals hate Christians? What we are asking for is for folks to share this and let others know about it. We are hoping to get into some hopefully honest dialogue with people who practice homosexuality and see their views of Christians and get some dialogue. And that's the goal of tonight. We do want to encourage you, if you want to find out more about Bible Thumping Wingnut, we encourage you to go to BibleThumpingWingnut.com, where you can find out not only about the podcast, of which this becomes one of them, but they're regular podcast, but there's also a network of podcasts with several of other podcasts, and you can check all of those out. So I'll encourage you to go to Bible Thumping Wingnut, find out more about them. I'd like to welcome to our discussion Matt Slick, somewhat known as the Great One. So Matt, how are you doing today?
I don't know who calls me that, but I'm doing okay.
Well,
how are you doing? What?
I thought you paid your wife to call you that, but
I tried to pay her. She won't take money to call me that. When I say that, people go, "Hey, what's your name?" I go, "Matt Slick," and they'll give me what? And I go, "Or Great One, you pick," and they get a chuckle out of that.
So we're going to try to have some fun here, but Matt, Matt is the I guess the president, the author of carm.org. If you go to carm.org, there's a lot of information out there. And actually, we're going to talk about a couple articles that I know you have up there on this subject until we get some people that practice homosexuality to come in and join us and hopefully discuss it. One of the things before we get started, Matt, I want to, because I know you have a bunch of articles and I want to go through some of them. And I would like to also maybe ask what happened when you were on the Daily Show. You had an interesting exchange there that I'm hoping we can get into so that we could maybe set the record straight on that. But before we get started, we're talking about do homosexuals hate Christians? Now, I think to preface this, I would say not all would be in that, but does shall we say the community or the group of that is pushing the agenda of homosexuality? And to give some background to this, Matt, and I end up having to explain how I read this article. I read an article in a homosexual magazine back in probably about 1989. The reason I read it was I was on a college campus during Christmas break. There were the only people on campus was my RA, myself, and some international students. And my RA and I got along pretty well, but he was a tad bit drunk, and he came over to me and asked me if I would. He said he found an article, magazine in the janitor's closet, and he wanted me to read an article. Now, part of me wonders if he really wanted me to read the article or if he practiced homosexuality and was seeing if there was any interest with having no other people on campus. Don't know which. But what I did do, like he asked, I did read the article. It was a very interesting article because the article basically laid out a game plan for how people who practice homosexuality could be mainstreamed. And that was the idea of it. And it was very interesting and enlightening. I wish I actually kind of kept it. Didn't realize how valuable it would end up being. But the article laid out an argument that in order to be accepted by the mainstream, they must be seen as victims. But the problem was they didn't want to be actual victims. And so they laid out a case that they had to be victims without someone that would actually victimize them. So someone that the culture would see could possibly be victimizing them without actually doing anything. And they decided to focus in on Christianity. They laid out the case that Christians not only could be seen as attacking them without actually doing anything, but in the end, that Christians would end up supporting them. And they argued by being victims, they could get into the schools at young ages and start teaching homosexuality, teaching that it's acceptable, and that within a generation, they would be able to start discussing homosexuality as a mainstream idea. And as I look at the culture, it seems like they handled that and got it worked to a T in that sense politically. And I'll reference a couple articles that you have, Matt, on Carm. But one of the things I think is that what they gathered their power with, they had to keep going with. And I think that's the dilemma, because I really think that they are pushing an agenda to keep going, and they have to keep finding ways to argue that they're victims. And one of the things I look at as an example is, something you have on your website, Matt, on carm.org. You have a thing called Christianity and Homosexuality, is an article. And in here you talk about the fact that there was bakers who were sued for not making cakes, and photographers who were sued for not taking photos at a same-sex wedding. And so the issue there was, it's almost like they're trying to look to say, look, we're still the victim because they won't do these things. They never asked that of the Muslims. But the other thing I noticed recently is this whole thing of being allowed to use whatever bathroom you want to use, as if somehow that is, in my mind, there's a real easy solution. You either get rid of all gender on all the bathrooms or make every bathroom unisex. And I'm puzzled that they think that by saying either of those two options is somehow discrimination, but yet they don't see that having someone choose their own bathroom, it almost seems, I could be wrong, like there's an agenda behind it. Because if you make every bathroom same sex, Matt,
no problem.
Unisex, is there a problem?
There's no problem.
No, everyone gets to use it. If there's no sex on any bathroom, you just go into any one that you want, is there a problem?
No problem.
Not there shouldn't be, according to them. We might have issues.
Oh, why wouldn't they want that? Maybe because they want the problem to be there, so it'll be focused on, so light will be shed on it, so they can then shift the thought of the populace by playing the victim, by saying that we're the biggest, etc. I don't know.
Yeah, and in your article that you have, what does the Bible say about homosexualty?
Yeah, that's the one article on Carm. Period.
Say again?
It's the #1 article on Carm.
I can understand why. There's a lot in this article, actually, as I'm looking through it. And you talk about the redefinition of marriage and things like this. Yeah. You mentioned in here that homosexuality is maybe 3% of our population.
Yeah.
One of the things that's kind of interesting, a recent statistics came out from the IRS looking at tax returns, things like this, with same-sex marriages. And the same-sex marriages account for 1/3 of 1% of all marriages. And there seems to be a lot of emphasis on something that's 1/3 of 1% of all marriages.
There seems to be a what?
A lot of attention.
Oh, I gotcha.
Something.
Yeah, I've always wondered about that. Why is it the super minority has power over the super majority? Why is that? Well, we have a politically correct system, which is liberal. We have people who, Christians, who don't care about the truth enough to stand up and argue. We've been beat down. We've been undereducated in our churches. In fact, it's just funny because just sitting here as the show was starting and something happened earlier. I forgot what it was, but nothing big. It was just something else on TV. I was just flipping on the channels and just once again got angry. Once again just became frustrated with the depravity of the world, the immorality of the world. And starting the show and just hearing more and more makes me think sometimes I want to start a church, start teaching people. And not that I'm a great teacher or anything, but hold on, let me clear my throat here one sec. Not that I'm a great teacher, but when I go to churches This is on my heart and mind a lot, because this issue of homosexuality, why is it succeeding? It's succeeding because the church is not doing anything. Why is the church not doing anything? The church isn't doing anything because the pastors aren't teaching what they need to teach. That's it. The pastors aren't teaching and equipping the Christians, and that needs to change. But we go back to the statistics. We go back to the evidence. We have plenty of evidence and statistics to show that homosexuality is dangerous, it's unhealthy, and it should not be promoted. It's costly in society. But all of these stats, a lot of them are from the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. A lot of these statistics are just simply ignored by the media. It's not politically correct, so they don't want facts. And here's the thing: unbelievers gain power through lies. Believers gain power through truth. We need to promote the truth and not and expose the lies.
Yeah. One of the things interesting, you have, I'm just reading your article here on, this is, as you said, number one article, what does the Bible say about homosexuality on carm.org? And in here under the section, you have a persecution of the non-politically correct. And I was unaware of this. You said, yet statistically, only 3% of the population are homosexuals. Christians, on the other hand, occupy a far higher percentage at 70%, yet they are not fairly represented in the media.
No, they're not. If you go to a TV show and you watch, how many of the TV shows have homosexuals in them? I mean, I just watched Star Trek, the latest Star Trek movie, and Sulu is presented as a homosexual. You never find any Christian presented in these movies. You don't find any Christian presented unless they're whacked, unless they're evil, unless they're bad. This is how it is across the board in movies, TV, sitcoms. Christians are either not portrayed at all or either portrayed badly. And homosexuals that are so few in number are portrayed favorably as the wise people, as the good people. This is horrible misrepresentation of the facts. We Christians have got to do something. We can't appeal to the goodness of the Hollywood elite and say, can you please represent us fairly? It's not going to happen. What we need to do is stand up. We need to fight. We need to become politely, consistently aggressive. We need to do that.
So you have some statistics on CARM about homosexuality. Will you be able to maybe go through some of those with us and tell us the name of the article?
Yeah, let me get to them. While we're talking, I was researching some stuff on Matt Dillahunty for my debate coming up this weekend. I don't have any time, and this, it's just I'm just booked.
Well, while you're looking it up, I mean, one of the things. Let me preface by saying this: if there's any who do practice homosexuality who are listening, maybe on Mixler or watching on YouTube right now, here's the thing: I think there are some that profess to be Christian that stand outside with signs like Westboro Baptist Church that say God hates fags. Clearly, both Matt Slick and I have not talked to him about this with him, but I can rest assured that I think I know the answer to this. I would say clearly both he and I believe that those folks are not Christians from a biblical position. Right. They are a cult that should be avoided, but I don't believe that they're Christian. And so because of that, we do make a distinction between those that are legitimately Christian. I would argue that Christians love homosexuals, not the sin, but there's plenty of Christians that will have no issue with individual people that practice the particular sin of homosexuality. Now, the fact that we call it a sin is only because God calls it a sin. I love liars. I love people who, commit adultery in their heart by lusting after other people. I mean, you can't avoid the fact that every single human being is a sinner. I don't think there's an issue between one specific sin and making that one specific sin somehow greater of a sin. I think that many Christians do that, and I'd be curious what your thoughts are on this, Matt, but I think many Christians maybe focus on a sin that they're not even close to being guilty of committing. So because they don't have a temptation in that way of homosexuality, it's easier for them to say it's wrong, but they're not so quick to say lying is wrong or gossiping is wrong. Would you agree with that?
Yep. Within the Christian church, there is a sensitivity that's been imposed upon us with a fear that we're not to speak the truth. And that is because the Christians aren't standing firm on the Word of God. And I just can't help but think sometimes that on the day of judgment, what's God going to say to us Christians who had the power, had the truth, who had the blood of Christ, and how we didn't do what we need to do? Sorry, this is really, I'm noticing it even within myself here, not to be narcissistic, I'm not trying to say that, it's just that more and more I realize how much the church has failed. It's just so much is coming up. I mean, we got, people like you, Andrew, who, I know, let me toot your horn for a little bit for people who are listening. This is important. What you do is you do seminars and you fly places and you teach. I know it costs you. I know it costs you financially, and I know it does, and it does me too, and others as well. We need more people who are willing to do that kind of a thing, as well as support those of us who are able to do those kind of things. But anyway, we got the issue of the homosexuality. I'm sorry, I'm digressing here because I'm just so distracted by the church. I'm just so distracted by it. It's just more and more on my heart and my mind. It's just more and more why we're not doing what we got to be doing. This homosexual thing wouldn't really be an issue if we were doing what we're supposed to be doing. We're not supposed to go out and hate homosexuals. I don't hate any homosexuals. I've had homosexual friends. I don't care if they're homosexual, in that fact that I don't want them to teach it to my kids. I care about that. But I've loved them. I've been friends with them the same as way I've been with others. And, but you're right. It's a sin. And we need to call it a sin for what it is. It doesn't mean because we call it a sin that we hate them. It doesn't mean we're homophobic. It just means it's a sin, just like adultery is a sin. Adultophobic if you say someone's an adulterer, or liophobic if you say lying is a sin. No, homosexuality gets this pass. Homosexuality gets this one thing. And I'm going to tell you something. I believe I know why. Why? Spiritually. If you go to Romans chapter 1, starting at verse 25, they exchanged the truth of God for a lie and worshiped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this reason, God gave them over to degrading passions, for their women exchanged the natural function for what is unnatural. And in the same way, also the men abandoned the natural function of the woman and burned in their desire toward one another, men with men committing indecent acts and receiving in their own persons the due penalty of their error. Just as they did not see fit to acknowledge God any longer, God gave them over to a depraved mind to do those things which are not proper. Now, what we see here is something that's really interesting. You don't find, at least I'm not aware of any place in Scripture where such a consequence is assigned to a sin. From what I understand, homosexuality is the only sin that when you commit it, when you're giving to it, that God gives you over to it. It's a judgment upon you so that you then start promoting it and wanting it promoted with others. And that's the rest of the chapter talks about that. So the reason I believe that in society, homosexuality gets the pass is because of this. These people, what they're doing is supporting it. God's judged their hearts. And so everything else is to be condemned except homosexuality. In my opinion, it is the manifestation of the judgment of God upon them for their sin. Now, the only solution for this judgment is the blood of Christ that washes away this sin. And they need, like everybody needs, to turn to Jesus Christ and put their faith or trust in Him, and not just be subject to their own passions and use the excuse, I was born this way, so therefore it's natural and good for me. Well, I was born to like women. Does it mean it's okay for me to go out and commit adultery? I was born to lie. Does it mean it's okay for me to lie? Such excuses just don't work. We're better than that. We are more responsible than that. We shouldn't be going around looking for excuses to justify our sin. And what we need to do, especially as Christians, is we need to expose the lies and the false doctrines, the false teachings, the spiritual consequences of, in this context, the homosexual movement, and shed light on it. We've got statistics, we've got the facts on our side. It needs to be done, and we need to start writing into magazines, start writing into on blogs, and put the statistics out there. And every Christian needs to start doing this everywhere, all the time. Sorry, I just meant a little rant.
That was a pretty good rant. No, I mean, you're right, because I do think that, look, I think that it's not an issue that we as Christians do not like homosexuals, although that's the impression that many have in the media, in Hollywood. It's always portrayed that if you're a Christian, you hate homosexuals. I've had people that practice homosexuality that have told me that. But the issue I find is, and the question I often ask them, those that I get to meet on the streets, and I'll ask them, do most of your friends who practice this hate Christians? And overwhelmingly, the answer is yes. And the reason they hate Christians is because of a wrong stereotype that I think is got to be there by, like I said, that article that I read in 1989. It really laid it out. If they stop being the victim, they lose their power, to be mainstreamed. And so I kind of think that some of this is driven from a political agenda. I don't know if you would agree. I think in looking at some of your articles, you talk about that. You have in some articles you talk about statistics. One thing that you brought up that is a topic I bring up a lot, and I'm trying to look to see. Here it is in the article on that you have. What does the Bible say about homosexuality? The question you raise is the redefinition of marriage. Where will it stop?
Yep.
And what right to? You just say what right to redefine marriage as a question, but I think you mean who has the right. And I think that's really a question I bring up a lot, because a lot of people who believe in a separation of church and state want to also say that the state should be able to redefine a church issue like marriage. Well, that's not believing in a separation of church and state.
Right.
It almost seems like they want to force us to accept their way of life as, and accept it as and celebrate it as if it is not a sin. And they want us to do that. I don't think, I could be wrong, Matt. Do you know anywhere in history, in U.S. history, where Christians forced people to go to church because we believe in church?
I believe the Catholic Church did that in the Inquisition period.
A Catholic did. I said in America because the Catholic Church done that in a lot of places. But we haven't done that. We don't, as Bible believing Christians, we believe that people should go to church, but we wouldn't tell those who practice homosexuality, you got to go to church on Sunday because we think that you should.
Right. We don't go sit there and indoctrinate them. What they're doing is they're using this false idea of separation of church and state. They're using it against us, and then they're forcing their theological, moral ideas down our throats. Their theological ideas are that the God of Christianity is wrong. That's a theological idea. And their mores they're trying to shove down our throat as well. I remember once I was out here in Boise, Idaho. I would, sometimes I'm asked every other year or so to do the annual day of prayer, go up on the steps with other pastors and leaders in the area and pray. And so, of course, across the street, the atheists are doing their protest, and which is, that's their right. That's okay. So there's like 10 or 15 atheists protesting, and there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Christians praying for their country. I mean, think about it. The atheists don't want the Christians to pray for the health of our country. Wow. So after we're done, the event was done. I went across the street and I talked to this one woman about church, separation of church and state. And I said, so you want separation of church and state? She said, that's right. So you don't want the church to influence the state? She said, that's correct. I said, how about the church influenced, or the state influencing the church, which it does? Are you okay with that? Literally, I mean, her eyes popped open. She had never thought of it before. I mean, it was so, I can still see her face. She's like, Never thought of it that it works both ways. This tells me how utterly indoctrinated and lack of critical thinking that is so pervasive in this movement. Now, I've talked to others with similar attitudes. It doesn't matter what your position is. If you're against homosexuality, you're a bigot. You're evil. You shouldn't. You could be fired from your job for believing homosexuality is a sin. If you believe it's a sin, you can be fired. And if you go to jobs and they'll have homosexuality training sensitivity courses, which is insulting to the Christian, but that's okay. Which is a bigoted attack upon the Christian position, but that's okay. And if you dare say in a workplace, you know what, I think homosexuality is a sin, you can be fired for it. The hypocrisy is rampant. See, when propaganda happens, people, one of the things that has to happen for propagandists to succeed is the people have to be stupidified. They have to be stupidified. They've got to be taught how not to think. They've got to be taught how to believe whatever they're told. They have to sit there, be knuckle draggers, slope heads with their mouths agape while bugs are flying around, and they don't care because they're just going to follow whoever and whatever the intelligentsia teaches them and tells them to believe. And why? Because they're taught not to think. They're taught just to believe whatever they're taught that the intelligentsia around them has the right way. They are the ones on the upper level of moral righteousness. We have to fight this. We have to do this as Christians. We got to expose this. We have to expose the hypocrisy there. And my verse more and more I'm citing to people is Matthew 16:18. Jesus said, the gates of hell will not prevail against the church. Now we can sit here and we can talk about why this is wrong or why that's wrong. We can talk about something, but if we don't do something related to it, then what good is it? It's just like when I preach, I'll teach theology, and I'll teach, like, for example, the economic trinity, and I'll explain why the doctrine of the economic trinity has importance in our real lives. I try and connect doctrine with actuality, because if doctrine has no purpose in our lives, whether it's to be glorify God or to do something, change, or repent, then it's useless. We want to have something that's of value. We're not here just to give information so that the Christians can pick their nose and they can sit on their hands and do nothing. This is information that we have to have in order to do something, to accomplish something, to be motivated to do. We've got the cut and paste section on Carm, and all you got to do is go in there and cut and paste, go into places and chat rooms, go on to Facebook pages and put up the statistics from the CDC and do something about it. Write letters, do things. See, Matthew 16:18, the gates of hell will not prevail against a church. Gates don't do anything. Gates sit there. Gates are defensive. And Jesus already, by stating that, is saying that the opposition already is on the defense. But this is what the average Christian thinks. The gates of hell have machine guns on them, and they have engines on them, and they're coming after us. So we got to go hide on Sunday morning and get babysitted and suckled at the breast milk of weak mamby-pamby theology. That's what's happening. I mean, I don't understand why pastors and teachers aren't teaching the truth in the strength of the power of the Word of God. Instead of these butt-faced morons on TV, what they do is say the power of God's word for you to name and claim it, and you get money, and you get your bank account, and you're supposed to be healthy and wealthy. That kind of idiocy is what's being taught on TV, instead of the kind of truth that says, pick up your cross and you follow him, and you pray, and you ask him to be used, and you be ready to be changed, and you be ready to go through what's necessary to pick up that cross. Sometimes it'll be easy, and sometimes it's going to be hard, but we are called to do something because God has called us to be bearers of light. We're to be fishers of men, not keepers of the aquarium. When we look at the issue of Matthew 16:18 and the issue of the gates of hell are not going to prevail against the church, we have got to realize that we need to be on the offensive, and that we have the power to be on the offensive. We have the obligation to be on the offensive, and we need to be on the offensive. But if Christians are going to be mamby-pambied into a lackadaisical kind of spiritual sleep in their churches, then there's a problem with the eldership, with the pastorates in the churches. And we men, just as the Constitution, I'm going to draw this analogy, as the Constitution says that we should have a militia to resist a government if it becomes oppressive, the men in the church should also resist the clergy if the clergy fails to do its proper job of teaching the Word of God. And this is what has to happen, but people don't want to study the Word of God in order to recognize what the righteousness is in order to accomplish what needs to be done. We Christian men are the ones who are responsible. We Christian men are the ones who got to get off our lazy rears. We Christian men are the ones who got to start praying. We Christian men are the ones who got to asking Jesus to use us, to put the unction upon our hearts, to give us the foolishness of the truth of God's word, to get out into the world and start speaking that truth and standing in unison and not looking at, baptized an infant or not baptized an infant, or charismatic or not, or dispensational or covenantal. Those aren't the issues. The issue is Jesus Christ and him crucified and the righteousness of God promoted and taught, which is what we are obligated to do, particularly and especially as Christian men. That's what he calls us to do. And if we don't do that, we're not worthy of him, because the Bible says, Jesus says, if you don't pick up your cross and follow him, you're not worthy of him. I think it's Luke 9:23. I may be wrong. But the idea is that we have to be worthy of following Christ. Not by our works of righteousness are we then made worthy to be with him. But the worthiness has to go with the idea and the issue of we are Christians and we need to stand up and be found worthy. It needs to be observed that we're worthy to follow him, even to the place of death, even to the place of discomfort. And we need to do this. That's what we got to do as Christians.
So let me interact with some questions that we've been seeing on the YouTube page. And I'll say this, is that if anyone wants to join and actually dialogue with us, we'd like to specifically talk to anyone who practices homosexuality and ask them, do they find that people in the homosexual community, whether they hate Christians, and if so, why, what their view is of Christians. But one person asks why God would then make gays. Well,
God didn't make gays.
Exactly. God doesn't make gays. He made humans, and humans sinned. And homosexuality is just one of many sins that are listed in Scripture, like lying and gossiping and many. It's just that this is one that seems to be focused on more so now because it's becoming a watershed issue. It's a watershed issue because of the fact that it's being forced upon us to have to answer. And so that's what makes it one. The other thing, Matt, I'll let you deal with this. Someone said that most homosexuals are Christian. Do you believe that?
No.
So if a person calls himself a Christian, are they Christian?
No. Well, they might be. Just because someone calls themselves a Christian doesn't mean they're a Christian. I can call myself a football fan, which I'm not. Doesn't mean that I am one. I can call myself an atheist. It doesn't mean I am one. See, we don't want them to start judging and defining what Christianity is. We need to do that, not them. What the unbelievers want to do is tell us where to worship, tell us when we can worship, tell us what we can say, tell us what we can't say. And then they want to start telling us what true Christianity is. In fact, I was watching something on TV. That's right. No, I was going through, just before the show, I was going through a list of shows, just wasting time. And the description of this one show was an exotic dancer needs to give up her lifestyle because her dying father, who's a pastor, wants her to take over the church. And I was dumbfounded by that. There's so many things that are wrong on all kinds of level. And yet this is what, this is what the unbelievers offer us. Woman pastoring, which is wrong. Exotic dancing, which that disqualifies her for being a pastor anyway, and working in the church. But they don't care. It's the issue of integrity and modesty, which Christianity teaches. And that a pastor would want his sinful daughter to be a pastor of a church. That wouldn't happen. It's just, this is how the unbelievers try and redefine Christianity, by stretching the boundaries, by presenting lies. It reminds me, there's a guy in the Mixler room. His nick is Glory to God. Yes, he's an atheist. He's living a lie.
No,
his nick is a lie. Yeah, he's a liar.
You know who he is.
I don't know who he is. He's a liar, and I don't want to talk to him. They have no problem in using mockery and hatred and sarcasm as a method of attack. And I don't do this. I don't. When I go into chat rooms, for example, if the unbelievers treat me like crud, I just say, okay, you're going to treat me like crud. You don't want a rational discourse. You want to be insulting. That's fine. I'll go find somebody who I can have an intelligent conversation with, and I leave. And there's a guy who follows me around, and he wants to have a dialogue with me in some of the chat rooms. And I say that each day, I give him 1 day, 1 insult per day. Each time you insult me, then I'm not going to talk to you for the rest of the day. And he goes, "What? You can't handle it? Bye. We're done." You know, and I'm trying to tell people, raise your standard. Don't lower your standard to the gutter kind of stuff that the skeptic tank people abide in all the time. And they'll use God's name in mockery. It's horrible. We Christians got to start fighting back.
So, one of the things, and I know some folks on YouTube are saying they can't get in. We have several people that are in here now that were able to click on the same link. It worked for them. So for the folks who are saying that we're somehow being unfair and not welcoming to people who practice homosexuality, that somehow as being claimed that we don't want them, we want a one-way conversation, that's not true. Click the link, join, and we'll be happy to talk with you. Before we get to Realistic Nihilist, I know he's got a question for you. He's kind of a regular on here. We've spoken to him in the past. Could you go through some of what you personally experienced with the way people treat Christians in the area when it comes to homosexuality, with what happened you were invited to The Daily Show.
Yeah.
And you were invited to speak on this issue, and some things happened that if you watched The Daily Show, you wouldn't know. What happened on the show, and what happened behind the scenes?
A few years ago, 2-3 years ago, I forgot which, I was contacted by The Daily Show, and they wanted me to come on the air and be interviewed by Samantha Bee and do a thing on homosexuality. And I literally had 3 phone calls, and I said, "Yeah, right. Give me a break. You guys are gonna butcher anything that I say, and I don't trust you." So they spent roughly 20 minutes on the phone with me, begging me, basically, not begging, but just assuring me they weren't going to do that. That what they wanted to do was represent me accurately and the other position. That occasionally they do serious pieces. And I said, "Yeah, right." And they told me this repeatedly over the phone in our first conversation. I called up my pastor, and I called up Michael Brown. And Michael Brown, he's a well-known national radio talk show host guy, and he wrote a book, something about homosexual. I got it myself. At any rate, a queer thing happened to America. And so I said, "Look, what do you think of this?" And he said, "Well, I don't know." And the pastor I was talking to said, "I don't know either." The second phone call, the Daily Show called me up. They said the same thing. A different person called. "Look, we're not here to lie. We're not going to misrepresent you. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. We promise we're not going to do it, not going to do it. We want to do a real thing. We heard that you are opinionated, that you're articulate. We heard you can say this. You can give a view. You know what you're talking about." I said, "Well, there's Michael Brown, and we don't want to talk to Michael Brown. Maybe you." I said, "Okay." I don't know what the reason was. And for another 20 minutes or half hour, they told me over and over and over, "We're not going to do this. We're not going to do this thing. We're not going to make you look bad." Okay. So I called up them again, whatever we talked. And the third phone conversation, the same thing from the Daily Show. They're really pursuing me. The same thing. So I finally agreed to do it because they repeatedly said they weren't going to do what they did do. I went in to, they flew me out. First, what was going to happen was this. They were really clever. Now, as I look back on it, I really believe they were deceptive. They first said what they're going to do is fly a film crew out to here. They would meet me either in my home or someplace, rent a place, what they said. I remember that. They would set everything up. I would simply drive to it, get the video done. I could drive home. They'd fly back. That's what they said they wanted to do. That's how they first enticed me. And I said, "Well, that sounds doable." And they said we could rent. They have places here in Boise to rent. They have no problem doing that. So about between the second and third phone call, when I was, okay, I'm getting more emotionally committed. I can do this. Maybe I can. They've said so many times. That's when they then said, "Oh, by the way, we can't have anybody come out now." Well, long story short, I ended up flying out there, took a chance. which I say, take chances for the Lord. Take a chance. Before I walked into the building, I had a recorder, a sound recorder right here in my upper left pocket, and I turned it on and I walked in. I had it on the whole time, and I still have that audio file. So what happened was we get into the video place, and they had a camera in front of me and a camera behind me, and Samantha B was sitting in front of me, 8 feet away, whatever. Cameraman in back, a cameraman in front. They're supposed to only have me there for 1.5 hours, and what happened was I was there for 2 hours and 45 minutes, almost twice as long as what they wanted. Why? I know why. Because they could not find enough dirt in order to make me look bad. I kept giving them rational answers. I believe I was giving statistics. I don't remember so much anymore. I was being careful. All right. Then we're done. Then the show airs. And what happened was they had the camera on me from one angle where I'm saying something, and then in mid-sentence, the camera angle shifts to another angle from behind, and my voice continues. And what they had done is they had taken two different things from two different areas of context, put them together, and made me say what I did not say. And it was my wife who found out, because she had the audio, and she's the one who listened to everything. She was livid, because that's called Frankensteining. And what that is you take a part here, you part there, you put it together, and you make what you want. And they Frankenstein me, and they lied. Oh, this is the agenda, in my opinion. This is the agenda of the left. I've personally experienced this. I personally experienced it. In fact, a month later, I was called up by another talk show, and they wanted me to fly to Connecticut. It never happened, but I told them what happened, and they said that's called Frankensteining. And they said, we don't do that. And I'm like, yeah, who knows what? They said it will be a live show. There's no editing. It's live. I'd be on camera live. I said, well, that's different. They couldn't Frankenstein you then. But at any rate, that's what happens on the Daily Show. And I still get mocked from atheists. And what the atheists don't realize is that these people had to lie to do what they did, and the atheists think that's okay. Really ridiculous.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, there's some folks who are saying that they are trying to join from YouTube. What I'm going to ask is if you guys, I don't want to be, I'm not sure how to get this to where they're saying the link is not working. I'm going to drop the link into Mixler. If you go to Mixler, mixlr.com, and you can just go to Biblethumpingwingnut, I'm going to drop the link there, and you can join from there. For some reason, I cannot.
Or go to Carm.
Go to carm.org. Better yet, go to carm.org. Get the link to join. Hopefully, you'll be able to join from that. For some reason, I cannot drop a link into YouTube. So sorry about that, folks. We are trying. I'm going to add.
Go to Carm on the right-hand side. Go to the homepage, right-hand side. It says Live Google Hangout, and it should work. Just the first one, click here to participate, and you should open it up.
So we're not in any way purposely trying not to have folks join, just so that's clear. It may be a technical issue and things like that. But Realistic Nihilist has joined. He said that he had some questions for you, Matt.
Sure.
Folks who are familiar here, this is not the first time he's been on. We usually get some pretty good discussions with him. So you can feel free to unmute yourself. Don't know if I need to.
Hey, Andrew, what's up?
Hey, how you doing? Can I go by your first name or no?
Yeah, that's fine. It's no big deal.
Okay, so welcome, Josh. It's good to have you with us.
Yeah, so I was sort of curious. At first, I was curious about the separation of church and state thing, because I think normally the account of separation of church and state is just so that the religion isn't making laws, right? But obviously, I think most people agree that the laws should pertain to religious institutions, right? Most people don't think that if you had a religion, for example, that commanded the kidnapping and murder of virgins, they wouldn't want the law to respect that. So that's not what people mean when they mean separation of church and state. What they normally mean is that they don't want their ideological views guiding the law. That's what separation of
Why
church and
not?
state means.
Why is that wrong?
Well, I think it's because of the idea of freedom of religion. If one religious sect is supporting their views, then it's going to be hazardous to democratic society, right? I think that's
Wait. So if a religion says, be honest, don't murder, don't rape, you don't want that to influence anybody?
well, those are secular values too. So it's not exclusive to a religion values. What they don't want is like if it were commanded, for example, if some people interpreted the Bible as saying that homosexuals ought to be stoned or something like that, they wouldn't want there to be legal policy that was biasedly affected by that view, right?
The point I'm trying to make is this, that just because it's religious doesn't mean it's bad, and just because it's secular doesn't mean it's good. When the state starts determining what morals are to be influenced, where does the state itself get its moral base from? If it's going to be secular, then we're going to have a problem, because when we look at secular governments throughout history, we can see that they've murdered more than 100 million people. You want a religious system. And in fact, the founding fathers of our government actually said, I'm trying to see if I can find some of this on my website, actually said that we need to have religious people in our government. That we should.
Well, I don't see that why that would be necessary for a secular society, right? You could have a secular society that had morals that are, completely that don't involve genocide at all. So, but I mean,
Where
I
do they
think,
get these morals?
well, I mean, that's not I don't
Yes, it
find that to
is.
be
Yes,
an interest.
Oh, I do. Well, I want to know where
Well,
they're going to get them. They get them out of the Cracker Jack box. They get them out of Obama's, his head. Where are they getting them from? You want Trump to
well,
do it? Who do you want? Where do you want to get the morals from?
it's sort of, I just think it's sort of besides the point because, like, if,
Okay, so in other
yeah,
words, you don't have an answer, and so you want to avoid it.
well,
It's
if I can explain,
critical because the source is the spring comes out of the source. Where do the morals come from?
well,
How do you know what
I'd
morals
like
are
to
right?
explain. Well, I'm just saying that, um, let's suppose that the morals it doesn't matter where they came out. Let's presuppose that they have those morals, right? If they have those morals, then they're not going to go killing people, right? So so it doesn't really matter
Which
where they come
morals?
from as long as
Which
they have,
morals?
well, let's just say they have moral principles against genocide or something like that.
Okay, wait,
Then
wait,
if they
wait, wait,
have
wait,
those,
wait, wait, wait. If that's the case, secular societies, then why do secular societies kill so many 100 million people in the 1900s? Why'd that happen? If secular societies and their morals are the way to go?
well, I think there's probably a long convoluted explanation for that
Yeah.
that involves capitalism. But the point is that it's
Whoa, whoa,
not.
whoa, dude. Stalin in Russia killed at least 30 million people in his atheistic regime. Mao
Well, I have to.
Zedong killed, I think, if I remember correctly, at least 10 million.
I'm not a Stalinist. I'm a
You said
Leninist, but
capitalism. You said
right.
capitalism.
I,
You blame
I know.
capitalism.
Right. I think there was a lot of bureaucracy under Stalin. We'll have to.
Oh,
The point.
yeah.
Look, I don't. This is sort of beside the point. What I was telling you is I was trying to get you to concede that the separation of church and state that's sort of the view that they have, right? They don't have the view that the state shouldn't have any influence on the church, right? They don't have that view.
John Quincy Adams, July 4th, 1821. He's our president then. The highest glory of the American Revolution was this: it connected in one indissoluble bond the principles of civil government with the principles of Christianity. From the day of the Declaration, they, the American people, were bound by the laws of God, which they all, and by the laws of the gospel, which they nearly all acknowledge as the rules of their conduct. That's one quote. I got a lot more.
I just don't take that to be, I mean, authoritative for the people who are engaged in the debate today, right?
Well, wait. These are the guys who knew the Constitution, who set it up.
Right, but I'm just saying I don't think that they take that to be authoritative insofar as the debate today is
Why would
concerned,
he
right?
say that?
Well, look, I'm not interested in what some guy said, right?
It's
I
the
was just
second
trying
thing you're
to
not interested in. If it doesn't
I
fit
was
your
just trying
agenda,
to explain. I was just trying to explain how the debate is framed in today's society, right?
Well,
That's
okay,
all I
but
was doing.
let me ask this:
Yeah,
separation of church and state, does it exist in our Constitution?
I'm not sure. I don't know the
Okay,
historical facts.
so let me give you some history on that then. So no, the answer is it
no, it
said
doesn't.
there is no separation of church and state anywhere in the Constitution, Bill of Rights, Declaration of Independence. The first time we see it is when Thomas Jefferson, a non-Christian, a known deist, became president. He wrote it when in response to a Baptist church, and the way that it was written, it was because he was informing them that there is a separation of church and state, and that the state will not get involved in church issues. The way that has been phrased and reused is to keep the church out of the state, which is never what it was meant. It was meant to keep the state. Sorry, I said that wrong. It's used now commonly as you're arguing that the church should be out of the state. It was written originally to keep the state out of the church, that the state would not get involved in things like redefining of marriage. That's a church issue that the
Can I
state is putting itself in.
Yeah, I'll just respond to that really quick. First of all, I don't believe you. So if you'd cite it in the external chat, that's the one I can access at the moment, and I'll read that once I get home. Second
Well,
of all,
okay, so it would be real simple. Just look up, separation of church and state, Thomas Jefferson. You'll see plenty of stuff on it. Just read the Constitution and show me where it is. It's not there.
yeah, that's fine. I'm not gonna obviously.
What external chat are you referring to?
Oh, I'm
Next
just
one?
talking. If you go to hangouts.google.com, and
Okay.
then there's a Hangout chat, and that's the one I had been typing in before I was broadcast. There's one other question I was hoping to ask Matt just before I was trying to get through this really fast. The only reason I said I wasn't interested, Matt, is not because I didn't want to have a discussion. It's just that I don't want to take up all the time. Right? What I'm trying to do is breeze through these issues as fast as I can, so that you can get to other callers. So what I take someone in the side chat asked why God made homosexuals, and so I think on my view, and I thought it was the case that on your view everything happens by God's decree, and on my view of intentionality, on my view of responsibility, I take it to be the case that if you know something is going to happen, and then participate in an action that's going to bring about those states of affairs, then you're ultimately responsible. If we took like an analogy from pushing a rock down a hill onto a car, right? If I push a rock knowing that the rock is going to fall and crush the car that's on the bottom of the hill, then I'm responsible for that car being that way. Now, likewise, if God knows that if He creates this guy named Steve, um, whatever you want to call him, it doesn't matter, right? And He knows that throughout the course of Steve's life, Steve is going to engage in homosexual actions, then I take God to be responsible for engaging in homosexual actions because He created Steve knowing full well what would happen to Steve. And so that's sort of my view of responsibility, and I was wondering what your thoughts were on that.
I knew when I would have children that my children would lie to me, that they would be rebellious. I knew that by bringing them into the world, this would occur. So am I responsible for their lying and rebellion?
Yeah, I think if you knew, if you actually, I
Okay.
think,
So then
well,
when
first
they
of all,
lie, I'm the one who should be punished for their lies?
well, I don't think that punishment might be adequate in certain forms of self-corrective action, but I don't think it's something that you have the ability to correct,
Yeah,
right? I don't.
I'm just trying to tell you, you gave this, said God's the one who made them. God brought them into existence knowing this was going to happen, so God's responsible. So if I have children knowing that they're going to lie, am I responsible for their lying?
Yeah, I think you're ultimately responsible for them. Like you're
So
responsible
your
for them
parents are
existing.
responsible for your rebellion, and your parents are responsible for your lies.
Well, I would think that if we were to cash out responsibility ultimately,
Okay.
I think everything would ultimately
Okay.
be God's responsibility
Okay. So
because
you're
God
not answering the
knew.
question. Look. Focus. I asked you a specific question based on what you said. You're
Yeah.
ignoring the question.
Well, I don't. First of all, I don't think that my parents could
Okay.
have justified belief about
Okay. Look.
what
Look.
actions I would
You
engage
said,
in.
look, let's go one more time. This is what you said, that God made people knowing that they're going to do bad things, so God's responsible. Okay,
Yeah.
so I
Yes.
said I have children. Does it mean I'm the one who made them do bad things, or I'm responsible for them doing bad things as though I made it? No, that's not the case. I asked you, is your mom and dad responsible for the bad things you do? You don't answer the question. It's either
Yeah. Well,
yes they
I
are or no they're not. If you say yes they are, then we got to discuss that problem that you have. And if you say no you're not, you refute yourself.
well let me. What I was trying to explain is that I think that they would be responsible if they could have a type of justified belief and they had the desire not to, for me not to lie, right?
I had a desire for
But
my children not to lie.
well, let me phrase it in a form of a dilemma, right? Let's say
No,
that
I don't
God.
want to.
Well, okay,
Well,
let's,
I was just.
because this
Do you
this
mind?
yeah. Why don't you finish off, and then I want to, because there was someone that joined Tab, and I want to see if we could, if he's got some questions. Oh, I do want to try and get through some folks that are in here, see if there's other questions. So go ahead, finish up, and then we'll move on.
Okay, well, I think that there's a dilemma, right? And the dilemma is something like, well, if God didn't want there to be homosexuals or people who engaged in some homosexual activity, then he oughtn't to have created these people knowing that that's what they would do, right? And if the idea
Why
is that
not? Why not?
and that the idea, well, because he had the desire for them not to, right? And he knew
Wait,
that
wait,
they
wait, wait,
would.
wait, 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 whoa. How do you know that?
Well, I just if you are conceding that God had the desire for people to engage in homosexual action, then I don't have a problem with that.
Well, hold
But
on a
then,
second. You're not listening. You're not hearing what I'm saying. Okay.
okay,
It's a far deeper issue. This is what is often the case with atheists. They don't know what they're criticizing. They don't understand the issues. If you're going to step into our worldview and try and argue from inside of it, then you need to do some homework. You need to study federal headship, for one thing. Do you know what federal headship is?
yeah, I think that's where God vested Adam with responsibility or whatever, something like that.
Representation, right. God directly created Adam. That's the way that is. God directly created him. He created him good. It wasn't until Adam started acting like an atheist that things went bad, when he started judging morality for his own without the consideration of God. That's when things went bad. And because of federal headship, then Adam is the one who brought sin into the world. And one of the effects of sin is homosexuality, among other things. Okay.
But did God know that Adam? Did
Of
God
course
know
he
that?
did.
Okay, so then, so the idea is that either God wanted Adam to do bad or he didn't, right?
Or well, look, you see, it's not as simple as he wanted them or didn't want them. It's not as simple as that, because we have in theological circles discussions about the wills of God, the decretive, prescriptive, and permissive will of God. So God decrees. He says, let there be light. The universe exists. He says the prescriptive is don't lie. So, but then the permissive will is he allows you to lie. So God can say, you have free will, don't lie. Then they lie. So
Oh, so
we would say that in theology, we'd say, well, there is a sense in which God willed that people lie, but not in the sense of causing, but in the sense of willing to allow them to freely do it in rebellion against him.
are you a libertarian about freedom?
I'm compatibilist.
Oh, you're a compatibilist about freedom of the will, right? So,
Yeah, I'm a consistent biblical person. And I believe compatibilism.
okay, well then if compatibilism is true, then it seems that God could have instantiated causal factors that made agents only freely choose
How do
the
you
good,
know?
right?
How do you know?
Well, I think it's constituted by the conception of omnipotence, right?
No, you don't understand what omnipotence is. Omnipotence is able to do whatever God wants to do and whatever he's able to do, that they're concomitant. God cannot, for example, make a square circle. He cannot
Right, but
stop being God.
but
Okay,
that's logically incoherent. But
exactly.
there's nothing logically incoherent about creating compatibilist free
How do
creatures
you
that only
know?
freely choose the
How do
good.
you know? You see,
Well,
look, there's a clue found in 1 Timothy 5:21. Now, this is just my idea. This is my theory. This is where I'm going to have to go to give an answer to you. Now, my idea is this. This is what I lean towards. 1 Timothy 5:21 talks about elect angels. Why are there elect angels? Election is this issue of God choosing. This is the biblical worldview. Election is to choose. Eklektos, eklege, eklegomai. God chooses. He chooses individuals for various purposes. He chooses nations for various purposes. He has the right to do this, and he declares this in Romans 9:9-23. He has that right. He's the creator. He's the author. Well, why are there elect angels? This got me puzzled, and I'm serious. I'm like, why are there elect angels? And it dawned on me one day, long story short, that holiness is something that belongs to God alone. Holiness is part of his nature. He cannot give his nature to somebody else because that's just impossible. God alone is God. God alone is omnipotent. He can't give omnipotence to somebody else. God alone is omniscient. He can't give omniscience to somebody else. Alone is holy. God cannot give holiness to somebody else. It's part of his character, his essence. It belongs to him alone. So, since he cannot, my conclusion is this, that all sentient beings will sin because they don't possess holiness. Holiness can be defined as the inability to sin. They don't possess this, and this my belief is that all sentient creatures will, in fact, sin. They will. They're just going to. That's why we have elect angels to prevent that. They will unless they're prevented. I should modify that. So God elected certain angels not to sin, not to fall, because there wouldn't be any redemptive work for them. And he elected people out of the fall, humans, in order to say, okay, so this is my case out of Scripture. Having said that, then when we look at the issue of compatibilist free will, we can say that we are made in the image of God, Genesis 1:26. We have the ability to think like God, but not as well. We have the ability to love, God can love, but we can love. He can hate, we can hate. He can think, we can think. It's called communicable attributes of God. There's representation of mankind from God. We have certain responsibilities that are tied in with this. Along with this is federal headship, male representation of descendants. And we have this issue, and I don't want to lose my train of thought here, of the requirement of being holy and being right, 1 Peter 1:16, but people can't do it. Compatibilist free will simply says that we can only do what we're able to do as defined and revealed by Scripture. Since we're not holy by nature, then we're going to fail. We're going to sin. But that doesn't mean that God is responsible for their sin. When he creates them with the ability to have freedom of choice, uncoerced choice. They then do that. They freely choose. They're freely responsible because they made these choices. That's just how it is. It doesn't mean that God is the one who caused them any more than it means that I knew my children were freely going to rebel against me, and therefore I'm the cause of that rebellion. And I'm the one responsible for their rebellion, and I'm the one who needs to be jailed for their rebellion.
I don't think we can cash it out in terms of punishment, but like I was saying, if God knew that they were going to do it and wanted that not to occur, then I wonder why God would have created anybody.
He wanted, there are certain levels of want where God has to, so to speak, give and take. If he's going to give people their freedom, if he's going to give them their freedom, then he's also going to have to allow them to rebel against him. And it's his desire to allow them to rebel. It's his will to allow them to rebel. It's called the permissive will of God. It doesn't mean he's the one causing them to rebel.
Well, I understand. I'm just saying, right, like, say God knows all the antecedent factors that are going to lead to their rebellion, right? And God has the power to change those antecedent factors.
How do you know he does?
Well, like I said, I thought it was constitutive of the concept of omnipotence. That
no.
If God wanted to, may I finish my sentence, please?
Sorry. Yes. Sorry.
The idea was that if God had the desire, I think I'm cutting out. Is it not coming in?
I think I'm overspeaking you because there might be a delay. My apologies. I'll just be quiet. Keep going.
Oh, yeah. So what I was saying is that my idea is that God can do all things logically possible, but there's nothing logically impossible about a free creature freely choosing the good. I mean, presumably we do it all the time, and there's nothing logically incoherent about a free creature choosing the good, given every single circumstance there, and that's logically coherent, right? Unless you want to show that there's a contradiction in it.
No, that's an inconsistent thing in that you can't define what good is without begging the question.
Well, I just assume it for the sake of argument. Like I just assume the theist conception of good for the sake of argument.
The theistic conception of good can only really be defined as that which is consistent with the holy character of God.
Right. So I don't understand. I don't understand why you'd have to think that agents have to act inconsistently with God.
Because they're free.
Right, but we already said that under compatibilism, given the antecedent conditions, God could make it just whatever it was that was consistent with his nature, right?
Yes, and that's the question, what would be consistent with his nature. And if you don't have a list of that, then you can't make any conclusions. And if I don't have a list, I can't make any conclusions. But the Bible reveals to us that God is consistent, or that God is holy, so we would know that he'd make holy decisions. We also know that Adam and Eve were not made holy, they were made good, and they were able to rebel against God. God knew they would rebel, so it was within the will of God to allow them to rebel. He gave them prescriptive will. Don't eat of the tree. He allowed them to eat of the tree. He's not the one who made them eat the tree.
Well, he knew. But he set up the antecedent conditions such that they would eat at the tree. Is that correct?
And part of the condition is their free will, their ability to do what they really wanted to do.
I'm not understanding. Is prima facie? Is there some sort of logical incoherence with free creatures always choosing the good, especially under compatibilism?
Okay, so
No, free creatures always choose the good. Let me ask you really fast: are you a naturalist, a physicalist?
No.
What are you?
Well, I believe that there are non-natural properties in the world, and intentionality is a non-natural property.
Oh, so you're a property dualist.
No, I don't. No, property dualists think that the physical is the only thing that exists, and the physical has mental properties. But I don't hold that view.
Okay. We could talk about it sometime because I think it affects how you're understanding the issues. In Christian theology, what we're going to be getting into, we don't have to talk about this now. We're going to move on. In Christian theology, free will is the ability to be able to make unforced choices. And that's what we freely do. To say that the antecedent causes were arranged by God doesn't mean God's responsible, because he is the one who injects freedom into it, since we're made in his image. And thereby, by the doctrine of being made in his image, we have that issue of freedom and culpability upon ourselves, which is why,
I don't
in my
want
opinion,
to. I don't want to be rude. Sorry, I have to go. I wanted to say
okay.
thank you for letting me talk to you, and it was good talking to you. I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Okay, see ya.
thanks, Josh. Thanks for coming in. I've added Jordan to the conversation. Jordan has some questions. Jordan is another one that's been on before. He is a non-believer. He claims that in the past that he used to have a faith, but does not. He wanted to discuss this issue. Hopefully we can get back to the topic of the night. So Jordan, you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Is it just me, or is Andrew's mic kind of choppy?
It's Andrew. Yeah, Andrew was doing it. You're fine.
Okay, I was making sure it wasn't my computer. Well, I guess so. The topic was homosexuality. It wasn't really what my question was about, but I can try to think of one dealing with homosexuality if we need to stick to that.
If you want, I don't know. It's up to whatever.
Go for it.
I actually had a question about just apologetic methodology in general.
Are you a Christian?
No, sir.
What are you, if I can ask? I
just believe in God, and it's about that simple. I don't believe in angels and demons and saviors and stuff like that. I don't believe in heaven and hell. And
you're a theist then. Nondescript theist. Okay.
Yeah, we can go with that for now. I'm probably one of the few non-believers that's actually read Van Til, and
wow, impressive.
I guess as I listen to apologists that practice like covenantal apologetics or presuppositional apologetics,
right?
Even within that camp, I see differences, and I was going to have you just maybe comment on the differences, and like on two ends of the spectrum. On one end, I see James White, who's I think an incredible debater. I'm a huge fan, and I see Matt as somewhere in the middle of like a James White and a Seitan Bruggencate. And I was curious as if the argument is as simple and as straightforward as like Sai seems to think it is. And the minute that an objection is brought up about the Bible, he just says, well, I just don't have Bible studies with non-believers. And he doesn't ever have to really go into it. I mean, if that's really the way that it should be approached, then why doesn't everyone that uses presuppositional apologetics argue in that manner? And I think you'd be a good one to ask because you're kind of in the middle. I see you kind of using both.
Yeah, I do. Little schmoozing there. That was good. It worked. I've sat in the car with Cy before, talking and traveling between things and stuff. And I'll say that I don't always agree with Cy's logic, even within presuppositionalism, but that's what it is. If James White and I were to have a discussion, there's always going to be some disagreements. And you know who John Frame is? If you've read Van Til, do you know who John Frame is?
Yes, one of my best friends who's a pastor at a PCUSA church.
PCA. No,
yeah,
PCA wouldn't be PCUSA.
Yes. PCA church. He actually studied under him. So.
Yeah, so did I. I was able to study under him in seminary, so I was privileged to that. So why I'm particularly impressed you read Van Til. Not many people have. Van Til obviously was brilliant, and he needs to be studied more and stuff. But at any rate, whatever. So there's a Clarkian presuppositionalist, which I'm not sure what that is because I haven't studied it. There's more Van Tilian. There's a John Framian kind. There's Seitan Bruggencake. There's Matt Slickian. I like Slickian presuppositionalism. I think that's the best, obviously. And we just have degrees of differences in how we perceive things and certain assumptions. We have, I think, if I remember correctly, I think all presuppositionalists, apologists, are also Reformed. That I could be easily wrong. I just don't know. But I think that's
you're wrong.
I am wrong. Okay.
Yeah. Is my mic okay or no?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, my seminary was definitely not Calvinistic, but definitely presuppositionalist.
Okay, good. Okay.
But most people will make the claim that you claimed.
Yeah. I just hadn't thought about it until I was just saying it. So I'm not sure how to answer your question. I think your name's Josh.
Jordan.
I forgot. Jordan, sorry, man.
Like the river.
So, he's not forgetting now. Now you got it. Now he's got it.
Yeah, I want to say things, Mr. Theist, who won't tell me exactly what you are. Jordan, dude, I want to say get baptized. All this stuff goes into my head. Just having fun there. What was your question? Sorry, man. What was your question again?
Well, it wasn't really a direct question. It was just, okay. I just wanted your commentary or your opinion on why there is such a difference, and maybe why, as a non-believer, I like James White better than Seitan Bruggencake. Why would that be? Is it because James White's more of a sinner and my rebellious suppression of God drives me towards him instead of the truth where Cy's arguing from?
I would say that the differences between them is Cy tends to so presuppositionally deal with things that he almost doesn't deal with things, and where James will deal with things presuppositionally, and he brings it out on the table more and dissects it more. I would think that.
Okay, now that answers the questions I have. Basically, what you just said there, that sometimes, because that's how it seemed to me, but I didn't know if maybe it was just me that Cy seems to presuppositionalize it to set the argument to such an extent that he doesn't deal with anything.
Yeah, and see, what I like about Cy is that when he does that, it's interesting to see how his brain works and what's going on. And a lot of times it's like, that's very good insight. And sometimes I've sat and talked with them and I've gone, I don't know if I agree with that. And that's okay, But so he is so presuppositional that he's just so too far to one side for me. And James on the other side, I'm closer to James in his style and approach than I am to Cy, I think. I don't know if you agree.
I think also what plays in on this is the fact that Cy is more often than not on the streets talking to atheists on the streets, where James White is more dealing with timed debates, not so much with the atheists as he's like a lot of Muslims. But
now you're breaking up worse.
Now I'm breaking up worse. Okay.
It was good, and then as you're talking, it gradually got so bad we have trouble. Good. Now try it again.
Yeah, so I think the issue is who they speak to.
Yeah, that's true in the format too. You can see you got a new smart mic. It knows when to mute you.
No, if that was true, it'd always be muted.
Yeah, I think you're right there.
I mean, there is a
context.
thing, and I think, Matt, you may be aware of this. I mean, you've done lots of debates. There are people, you've seen a lot of people that do lots of debates. There's people that are, especially with open air preachers, these guys that get into debate mode, where just everything's a debate, and they almost where they got to win. Almost, I mean, not saying that is the motive, but when you're constantly on the defensive, I think in Sai's case, because he's on the defensive so much that he gets more defensive, I think, a little bit easier than maybe a James White who's in a timed debate. It's a totally different format.
Right, it is.
And after the debate's over, they shake hands and, it could be friendly. I think that Sai usually gets peppered with one after another on the street. I think it just makes some people more defensive, and I think what it is he's more prone to react that way, not just because he's usually, when he gets that argument, it's like he gets right into that mode maybe.
Yeah.
And it is different personalities.
Just a little break here. Are people able to get in with the link? Because I updated the link. Are they still having problems?
Well,
I'm just copying exactly what we're in here and putting it up.
Yeah, I mean, we had folks, and I'll say again, if there's folks on YouTube, several people who've been saying they want to come in, go to carm.org on the right. There's a link to join. It does work. Folks were able to use it to get in. I don't know why some folks are saying it's not. We did drop the link into Mixler as well. I'll drop it in again. If you go to Mixler.com, you dropped it in Mixler already. So we do welcome you to come in. We do have someone, Darth Dawkins. So I just love the name. So Jordan, do you have anything else?
Well, if Dawkins didn't have anything directly to ask, I did have, I guess, something to ask about homosexuality.
Let's find out. So stick around then, and let's see. We'll talk to some of these other guys. If they don't, then stick around, and we'll get back to you.
Okay.
So I'll add Darth Dawkins.
Yes,
awesome.
Thank you for calling me Darth Dawkins, but if you prefer, you can call me Lord Dawkins. I just have something quick that I would like to say to all of the atheists who are watching here tonight. It's very simple, it's short, it's sweet. It goes something like this.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Well, I will put that in the category of classic. So did you have any questions, Darth?
Oh, let's see. Why is Sir Richard Dawkins always so high-strung on British talk shows?
I don't know that we can answer that. Are you well, and he's gone. All right.
We gave up Jordan for that?
Yeah, I'm starting to wonder the same thing. So with that, there's a John. I added you to the broadcast. I don't know if you have any questions here for Matt.
I do. I have a little bit of a
John.
The other John. I'll shut up.
But okay, go ahead. You're a regular here, but go ahead.
Well, it has nothing to do with the main topic that we were talking about. But my wife and I were having a discussion earlier today. We discovered there's this new drug out there. And what it is, well, it's not new. It's been around for quite a while, but it's a natural drug called kratom, Kratom. Okay, and it's a plant that grows over in like Malaysia and Thailand and all that, and you can find it online, and you can also find it, in other places, I guess, in like supplement stores and GNCs, I suppose. And it's supposed to be like a really great pain reliever / it helps people get off of drugs. It helps with anxiety. It does all sorts of stuff. And that the government, and we haven't tried this stuff, I should say.
So how did John mute John?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. So, John, you were muted. Don't know how that worked, but
Someone muted me. Great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Going without controls. But I want to see if we could stay on topic. Is that
Okay. Not a problem. Go ahead. I'll talk about it later.
Yeah, so here's a question, Matt, that I would like to ask someone. Jill brings up, says Christian question, Matt, how would you handle an openly gay friend who rejects Christianity? Do you completely discontinue association with them due to differences of belief?
No. Let me give an example of something. I don't have any homosexual friends now, but I have. There's an atheist girl who is friends with one of my daughters, and we've known her for 10, 12 years. And she was, so to speak, a Christian when she was young, grew up, became an atheist. She's an atheist. And she, at one point, lived with us for a few months while we helped her out. And when she was an atheist, as an atheist, we helped her out. She stayed with us. And then she ended up moving out, which is fine. No hard feelings, nothing, just moved out. And then we found out that she was bad mouthing me on public forums. And I read what it was, and it was a misrepresentation. It was obviously not true. She was just venting or ranting, and what she was saying, I knew she knew wasn't true. And so people commented about this to her. Now here she is publicly insulting me after we had just helped her out. And so she wouldn't come over, wouldn't talk to me for a while. And then finally she did. And I just confronted her politely. I said to her, I said, you know that we love you. You know that you're always welcome here. But I'm curious why you said that. And she said, she actually admitted it was stupid. It was wrong. She just was drinking one night or whatever it was and put something up that was really bad. And she just said, it's not true. She says, she just calls me dad sometimes, but she'll say, you're great. You and my wife, Anik, she goes, you and Anik are the best people. You've always been behind me. So anyway, this whole thing. So here I am, and literally she spent the night last night, and I took her with my daughter to the airport this morning. So here's an example of friendship, so to speak, with someone with whom I completely disagree. And even in the case where we took care of her and helped her, and she insulted me publicly. And yet my response was to love her and be patient, not be angry at her, and just to show her Christian love. Well, that's what I would do with a homosexual. I would do the same thing. If, in fact, my friend, my daughters do have homosexual lesbian connection, I don't treat them any differently. I am respectful to them in the whole bit, and I don't push religion down their throats. And occasionally it might come up what I do, because they might say, where are you going again? And I'll tell them. I treat them well. I treat them properly. I treat them very nicely. That's how I treat them.
Yeah, I have. Is the mic okay right now?
A little bit breaking up, but hearable.
Okay, well, hopefully, let's see if it works. But I have family members that practice homosexuality. Family members, that are married to someone of the same sex. I have friends, who are. I've had no problems. I mean, I joke with, one guy who practices homosexuality. And I've said to him, I don't care as long as you don't try to kiss me.
Yeah, just don't try to kiss me. We've got a problem. I go for any guy.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, for me, it's no different than, let me give you Matt, you've been in Union Square, New York. You know what that's like. Yep. There. When I go evangelizing there, I remember one guy, James, he came up and he asked me what I think about homosexuality. And I just said, you want to know what I think? He's like, yeah, what do you think? I said, I don't care. Just don't try to kiss me. And he was like, well, what does God think? I said, what do you think God thinks? And he said, God says it's wrong. Okay, so we both agree on that. He's like, he was expecting me to kind of think that I was above him and look down on him. Well, what ended up happening was that in talking with him, I said to him the fact that, there's no difference in we both sin. I asked him whether he lusts after men. He said, yes. I said, okay, I lust after women. Both would be considered adultery of the heart. So we both commit the exact same sin in with different people. So the issue is now, what are we, innocent or guilty in God's sight? And so when we got done with that conversation, I remember that he was saying that he never met a Christian that didn't judge him. And they almost expect that. And I think that's why they're so upset with Christians, is they expect us to judge them. And what shocked him was I didn't. Now, when I ended up, as you know, Matt, you've seen me open air, I always want to shake the hand of my heckler. I'm going to shake his hand. I asked him if he'd shake my hand, and his friends actually held him by the shoulders. Don't give in to that Christian. And he actually literally had to shrug his shoulders to get their hands off to come over and shake my hand. And so as he came over, because his friends were trying to hold him back, I did what I'm sure you would do, Matt. I just got off my preaching box and I just slapped his hand away. I'm sure you would do the same. And actually, what I did, you would probably not do, knowing you. I just reached over and gave the guy a hug, because I have no problem hugging other guys. That shocked him.
No problem.
And he just looked at me. His eyes were huge, and he's like, I'm never going to forget you. I said, forget all about me. Don't forget about Christ. That's the importance. And he, even as he's walking away, is like looking over his shoulder and stuff. So I think the issue is we have to be able to recognize that we can have friendships with sinners, even as Christians.
You there? We lose you?
No.
Okay, there we go.
So Jordan, you can if you have another question, why don't you go for it?
Okay, I got me a gay question formulated. No pun intended. So, Matt, would it be possible for a practicing homosexual to let's say he got okay, let's back up a few steps. You would assume, or you would believe that the arguments, say, made by Matthew Vines in his book God and the Gay Christian are fallacious. His arguments are fallacious, and that
I've written stuff about him and responded to a lot of his stuff. Yeah.
Okay. So let's say Matthew was able to dupe someone. From your perspective, he duped someone into believing that the Bible really doesn't condemn homosexuality, and this person is after reading the book, he remains what he feels he's a Christian. He remains a Christian. He gets in a relationship with another man and marries them, and so he actually doesn't feel any guilt by what he's doing, because he believes that it's justified and that it's okay. And any suppressed guilt he might have, he says, is probably just because he was brainwashed when he was younger, but that the argument set forth in the book has sort of liberated him into being able to hold simultaneously the teachings of the Bible and his what he feels his orientation is. Is it possible for that person to be a regenerated Christian, a true Christian?
Okay, that's a good question. I can't answer it so quickly. The answer is yes and no, because there are variations going on here. People can be saved and regenerated in varying degrees of doctrinal ignorance and moral practice. What happens, though, with those people is that if they're truly regenerated, they move towards the truth. Now, I'm a little bit more tolerant than a lot of Christians are about this, because, for example, the Trinity. Let's just take the Trinity example, and which is one of the main doctrines of Christianity. You really can't be a true Christian if you're openly denying it. But it doesn't mean if someone openly denies it that is not a true Christian, because it might be ignorant. And so you got to find out, you got to dig. So I would say, well, just because a person's openly denying it doesn't mean the person's not really regenerate. It could be it hasn't been taught. And it's the same kind of thing that you're talking about. So in that sense, is it possible? I think it's possible, uh, and not normally, but I think it's possible. And I mean possible by logic and theology, if what I see in Scripture, that a person could be regenerate and still practice homosexuality, but not for very long. So let me qualify that, because I don't want people to take this out of context, what I'm saying. Just as so someone can be a Christian, become regenerate, and still be hooked on marijuana. And another Christian could be a person be regenerate and still be hooked on pornography. And you're struggling with it. Now, there's a difference between struggling and not struggling. One of the things we would say is that struggling against our sin is one of the signs of regeneration. And if there's no sign of struggling, then that would be an indication there's no regeneration. And that brings us into this thing. If someone were to be a homosexual and say that they were a Christian and were deceived into thinking they were a Christian when they really weren't, because they're believing a lie, then they wouldn't be Christian to begin with. If they're really Christian, even though some people can become Christian under false pretenses, it can really happen, and atheists can preach the gospel and people get saved, then if that's the case, then man, I hate this. I hate it. My brain's been fried lately, and I lose my train of thought. I didn't used to do this, and that's just what happened. Crud. I've
Too
been
much
studying
prepping for debates. Too many
too
debates.
much. I have been on the go for weeks and weeks and weeks, and
Too many debates. Too little time.
yeah, that's what it is. And I'll in the middle of something, I'll just forget what I'm thinking.
Well,
That's just how it happened. I'm sorry. Gosh.
Okay, well, let me let you rethink of that. I just want to
I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, sometimes not thinking about it will help. I just want to respond to
Man.
one thing that was said on
I hate that.
on YouTube. Comment on YouTube. Someone said they're sick of all this "you people are scum" talk or something like that. I can't find the exact. I was looking for the exact quote, but basically, I just want to be very, very clear that as Christians, we believe all people are sinners. We are not saying that because we think someone sins that they're scum. All right. This may be an argument. This actually shows the issue of the naming of this hangout. Do those who practice homosexuality hate Christians? This question, and I don't have it exactly worded right because I can't find it again, but it shows the very issue that we're trying to bring up. When they say that because we say that this is a sin, somehow we think they're less human. No, don't think you're less human. Don't think you're scum. We think you're a human being just like us, like everyone else who sins. Different sin? Yes. The idea that we think less of people is not correct. In fact, it's the very thing that we're trying to point out, that Christians do not have a view that, as being argued here. And this is what our culture is trying to tell people, and it's wrong. They think that we believe that we're better than homosexuals. Matt, I'm hearing you tonight. I'm not hearing that from you. I'm not hearing that from most Christians I know.
I never think I am. I never think I'm better than anybody. I'm just a sinner saved by grace, and that's all. And when I see a homosexual, I feel sorry for him. And not because of a condescending, mocking thing. I feel sorry for him. He's trapped in his sin. When I see a gang member, I feel sorry for him. He's trapped in his sin. And that's it. I look at it all as the same. They're all the same. They're trapped in varying types of sin, varying degrees of sin, in different sins. And that's I just have compassion for them. And I'm thankful that God has been gracious to me, and I ask that God would be gracious to them as well. That's all.
And so here's the exact wording. It said, "I can't get over this thing about the world thinking you are scum based only on what is written instead of what is perceived." That's the exact wording of it. And it's so I perceive someone that practices homosexuality as a person who practices homosexuality. I don't perceive them as scum. I don't know many biblical Christians that do. do I enjoy being around sin? No, there's a reason I don't go certain places, because I don't like seeing the sin that's out there. But that doesn't mean I think less of the individuals or don't perceive them in a way where, the idea of, well, just because it's written, well, it's written by God.
Yeah.
And that's the issue. The creator who created you is explaining to you the law. None of us as human beings like it, but we have no it's not our right to say, well, we're going to change the rules. I understand we live in a culture that thinks we can, but that's the whole thing. In trying to deny God is not solving the dilemma. It's really an issue of people that need to realize we care where you spend eternity. Look, I typically don't go to these gay pride festivals. I know a lot of people that go to evangelize there. One of the reasons I don't go is because of the sin that's blatantly displayed there, and it bothers me. Now, am I willing to go so that I can talk to Christians? Yeah, that I would do. That I would have no problem doing. And I do that at a lot of different places where I can talk to people who practice lots of different sins, and I don't treat them any differently. I treat them as individuals who are made in the image of God, but are in sin, are guilty of violating God's law, and need to repent, need to turn in their thinking from trusting themselves as a good person or their good works and turn to Jesus Christ. That's really the issue. It's not that Matt and I are better than anyone. If you get to know us, you'll realize both of us speak very unhighly of ourselves, even less unhighly of each other. But but the reality is neither one of us have a very high view of ourselves, because we know ourselves. We know that we live with our own sin that we have to deal with, and we hate it just as much. The issue is that, there's probably those who practice a whole lot of sins, including homosexuality, that may be far more moral than me in other areas, but it doesn't mean they're going to be right with God. And my concern is, where will they spend eternity? Matt's concern is, where would they spend eternity? And we are concerned because we have love, not hatred. But when people view us through a stereotype and not listen to us, then they themselves are not perceiving us as the individuals they want us to understand them as. And they're perceiving us through maybe not a written word, but a cultural word of a group that wants to have a hatred for us. One of the things I wanted to actually start with, man, I forgot until now, two big words that we see in the when we bring up these issues is tolerance and bigotry. I don't know if you're ready to give a definition for those, but I actually looked up on dictionary.com for a definition. If not, Matt, what's tolerance? If not, I could read it.
Actually, I'll do bigotry, because I studied that one in particular, and I was surprised what I found. And bigotry is the lack of the lack of considering another position, and just being just defiantly stubborn on your own. And so the homosexuals will yell and call Christians bigots because they don't approve of homosexuality, but they're the ones being the bigots because they're condemning, they're mocking, they're insulting us.
Yeah, the dictionary definition is a person who is utterly intolerant of any different creed, belief, or opinion. And that's why I got into the idea of tolerance. Tolerance is misused in our culture. For a group of people that say that they believe in tolerance, they want tolerance, they actually have changed that word and changed the word for bigotry to be the exact opposite. So tolerance is a fair objection and permissive attitude towards those opinions and beliefs and practices, racial or ethnic origins, etc., different from one's own. And so what you see there then is, if we're going to say, well, that's what tolerance is not me forcing you to accept me. Tolerance is me accepting you. So if those who practice homosexuality want to say they're tolerant, then they should be accepting of Christianity. And that's not what we see. We're saying we're accepting of the fact that people practice homosexuality. When we start saying that they're changing laws, they want to redefine marriage, they want to force the church to accept this, they want to force people to bake cakes for them, take pictures of them. I think of the two lesbian the lesbian couple who got married, had a ring made. They felt they even put a glowing review online about the jeweler. And then when they came back to visit the store and saw that the store had a sign saying that they support the biblical definition of marriage, they wanted their money back for the ring, saying that their rings were somehow tainted. And yet they didn't want to give the rings back. They just wanted the money back. The guy was being sued for this. Well, they've taken tolerance and actually given it the definition of intolerance. And bigotry they're saying bigotry is if you don't accept their worldview. And yet that is them not accepting our worldview. That's them not accepting our beliefs. That is the bigotry. I am accepting that they are practicing this behavior. I am not trying to stop it. Would I like to stop it? I'd like all sin to stop. But bigotry is when they try to force us to accept their worldview. That is bigotry. So I find it to be an interesting situation that we're in, because we live in a culture that really is not understanding language, it seems, anymore.
Right. It's propaganda.
Yes. So we do have someone else who just joined, Chris. I don't know if you have some questions. I've added you to chat or to the broadcast if you want to unmute yourself and ask any questions that you have. I know you were commenting a little bit here in the chat here. So if you want to unmute yourself, ask any questions. Was that your only question? We're doing well. Well, I only allowed you one, so that's it. Well,
Can't hear him.
Chris, did you? Okay, hold on. Let's see. You can't hear him?
No, it's like he's like a voice in the wilderness there.
Go for it, Chris. Chris's question
settings.
that he asked was how we were doing. That was the question he asked. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to comment on that question that Jordan had about practicing homosexual. But I think they take it the wrong way when we come at them as Christians, and we condemn the sin, which that's what it is, and we know that sin because God's revealed that in His Word. That's what He's revealed. So it's not that we are condemning the people, is that we're condemning the lifestyle they're leading that is sin against the holy God. But see, you can have someone with same-sex tendencies who struggle with it, and they can be a Christian. There's no problem with that. But I think when Jordan asked the question, he actually qualified that with a practicing homosexual, which means that they would consider that to be justified in some sort of way. And that, in my eyes, and Scripture from everything that I've read, would definitely put them outside of having the Holy Spirit.
Okay. Well, thanks for that, I guess. Some people online are saying, some atheist ranger is saying that he's tired of Christians like me who are trying to play the victim. And the comment I responded back to, and Matt, you've brought this up plenty of times. No one's suing the Muslim bakers, are they, for not making same-sex wedding cakes, are they?
No, they're not, because the Muslims will take matters into their own hands and be violent. So the homosexual community only wants to pick on the weaklings, and the weakling on the block right now is a Christian because they're not doing anything.
Well, in fact, they have gone in. I mean, someone went in with hidden camera, went to 14 bakeries. and not one of them would bake a cake. Not one. They didn't take it violence. It's just that it really, they don't have a desire to point out that the Muslims won't make cakes for same-sex weddings either. So, and I go back to how I started this broadcast with that article in the Homosexual magazine from the late 80s. They need to play the victim, and they need to be attacking someone as if we are attacking them. They specifically targeted Christianity because they knew that they could get away with it. But the reality is, they're not trying to force Muslims to accept them. They're not trying to force Jewish folks to accept them. They are trying to force Christians to accept them. That's bigotry. If you are against bigotry, then you should be supporting Christians' right to disagree with homosexuality and to not be forcing them to have to make wedding cakes if they think same-sex marriage is wrong, to have to share bathrooms with them if they think that's wrong. These are things that, and I think the bathroom, as I said earlier, for folks who may be joining now, I think the bathroom situation is the perfect proof that this is a political agenda and has nothing to do with the claims of trying to make people feel more accepted. Because the easiest solution is make every place have unisex bathrooms. As one individual bathroom for yourself, there's no issue at all anywhere. No one anywhere will feel uncomfortable. If you don't want to accept that and say, well, business is going to cost too much, then rip off male and female or men and women's from the bathroom, from all bathrooms, and anyone use any one they want, and no one will feel any kind of discrimination. But
the girl bathrooms are nicer anyway.
Exactly. They have like from what they have the sofas sometimes in places, I'm told. And I mean, the reality is that, that would be a solution. They say that if you take the male female off, that you're being discriminatory. How? You're removing all discrimination. The reality is, what you're doing in that is you are basically showing that this is a political issue. This is something where they want to have men go into girls' bathrooms and girls go into men's bathrooms. Yeah. What are your thoughts, Matt?
I agree with you. It's just the promotion of perversion. And if you were to put a lens of spirituality over this and look what's behind all this, it's there's spiritual issues of confusing male-female roles. And when you do that in a culture, what happens is various forms of perversion become normal. And the gender issue, and I'm really tired, the gender issue is just one of the ways that this is being perpetrated on society. We got to be careful and not let it happen as Christians. We got to stay strong and not let the enemy of our gospel try and force sexual promiscuity of its various forms to be accepted in society. That's what's happening with this gender thing. You know what? I am tanked, man. I'm fried. My brain's done.
Yeah, I've noticed that, and I think so. It'd be a good time for us to close out and be able to, we will have an after show with the guys from the Council of Google Plus, and so they usually run the after show. I'm looking for John, who's in here, and Tim to let me know if we're going to stay on this hangout or if we're going to start a new one. I think we might need to start a new one unless...
I already created an event, yeah. So we'll go ahead and start on that.
Good, okay. So if you want to drop that link in here, I have a funny feeling Matt's not going to join since...
No, you guys could tell. I could tell. All of a sudden, my brain's just kind of taking a sabbatical. I just got to...
Well, I think you better take yourself a slight vacation before this weekend, because you got a couple of things happening this weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, well, let me back up. This doesn't require a whole bunch of thought, but last weekend I was at John's church teaching, and I had to prep for that.
Woo.
Next week I'll be at Dallas Fort Worth debating two guys, and so I've only had about a week and a half of prep time for 2 debates. That is way under the amount that I'd like to debate or prep for. And anyway, so how it worked was, let's see, 2-3 months ago, I was in LA, and a few weeks after that, I had to go to Montana and do a debate. Then I had to go back to LA and do some teaching. Then I went to Seattle to do some teaching, and now I got to go next week and do some teaching. And it's just been week after week after week, day after day after day of just intense brain studying and stuff like that. And I don't have time to relax.
Well, it's either that Matt Slick is not used to that, or he's getting old.
Yeah, I'll be 60 this December. So yeah, and plus it is a lot to be studying that much for basically 3 months straight. That intense.
Well, with that, I'll say this, that I will encourage folks, if they want to go to GoFundMe, I think it's I'll look for Tim to correct me, but I think it's GoFundMe/Carm documentary. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. But you can help. There will be a documentary behind the scenes of what it takes for prepping for a debate and going through some of this. They're going to do some behind the scenes of these debates with Matt and video. So I encourage you to go out there, even though it's been fully funded. I would still recommend that you go out there and look to help support it, because the funds do go to Carm, which could use the funds for not just this debate, but then producing it and things like that, getting it into hands of other people. So encourage you to do that. There's also a t-shirt you can get at, I think it's Wrath and Grace. If not, you can go to Biblethumpingwingnut, contact them there. They'll tell you where to get the t-shirt, the Carm debate t-shirt. We want to try to get those. And so with that, we're gonna close out here and just say this for folks, that I encourage you to go to BibleThumpingWingnut.com to learn about all of the things going on at Bible Thumping Wingnut, all the other podcasts that are happening. Encourage you, as we have throughout here today, to go to carm.org, CARM.org. That stands for Christian Apologetics Research Ministry. There you'll find out not only a lot of articles, probably more than you'll ever be able to read in a lifetime, but you will find a lot of articles there on Christianity, apologetics, a whole lot of things. You'll also find out where you can be tuned in weekly or daily during the week to the Matt Slick live radio show. The other thing you could do there is go to that little button that says donate here and help support Matt. That's something that, as Christians, I ask those that after you're done supporting your local church, would you consider going there and supporting Matt in what he's doing so he can continue to be focused on what he's doing. They would love to hire a couple more people to kind of fix some of the things with the website that's happened. And if you guys would be willing to give monthly, that makes that possible. So encourage you again, go to BibleThumpingWingnut.com. You can get they have some t-shirts, they have some other things going on. There's blogs out there. Find out everything there. I am Andrew Rappaport. The ministry I work for is Striving for Eternity. You can find out more from strivingforeternity.org. You can find out about the classes we teach. Right now, tomorrow night, we'll teach on end times. We'll be correcting all of Matt Slick's heresies of amillennialism and teach the truth of premillennialism. That is a joke for anyone that doesn't know Matt and I. We joke about these things, but we are teaching different views of the end times and things like that. But we try to educate people, and I understand that there's been many who have been watching tonight who disagree with us. Those that profess to be atheists, those who practice homosexuality, know there were some difficulties with some coming in, but this would be the final message that I'd have really for anyone that doesn't know Jesus Christ. My encouragement to you is we do not think that homosexuality is some greater sin than any other. But every sin, whether it is telling a lie, whether it's gossiping, whether it's practicing homosexuality, whether it's committing adultery, all of them are sins in God's sight. They are breaking God's law. It makes us a criminal in his sight. And yet most people believe that they're good enough to go to heaven. Their good works or their good nature is enough. They think that God knows their heart, and they will think that they could go. If there's a heaven, they think they're going to go. Many people want to deny God exists as if that removes the accountability, but it does not. It is like a criminal pretending like the judge doesn't exist. Doesn't matter. The judge does exist, and he will judge us as guilty. What God himself did was God paid the fine. God came to earth, died on a cross to be the payment of sin for lying, for homosexuality, for adultery, for gossiping, for any kind of fornication. All of these things. Christ came and died on a cross as a payment for those things, that we could be set free, that we could be forgiven. So many people say that they do not think that they're guilty, that they're going to be guilty. And yet when you look at their life, what are they doing? They're doing a whole lot to try to remove that guilt, whether it be through alcohol, drugs, sex, work, many things that people get themselves addicted to try to relieve the guilt. And yet it doesn't relieve guilt. Many people even throw themselves into a religion, as you'd see within Islam and Mormonism. They throw themselves into a religion as if that will remove the guilt. It doesn't remove it. The reason we have guilt is because we're breaking God's law. What we need is forgiveness. And that's only offered through Jesus Christ. So my challenge to you before we close out is this. Please consider why Christ came and died on a cross. The reason Christ had to be God is only God can forgive an eternal fine by paying it. Being an eternal being, he can pay the eternal fine. Being a man, he could pay the fine of men. That's what makes Christ unique. He was fully God and fully man. So consider turning from yourself and trusting yourself, your good works, your good nature, whatever you think, and turn to Jesus Christ and receive him today. That would be my challenge to you. And if you are a Christian, I challenge you to be a Bible thumping wingnut, to go out there and show yourself to be approved, to go and study and reach this world for Christ. And until next time, we want to encourage you that you may just continue to live a life for Christ, because there is a day coming when every one of us will face that Creator, face that Judge. And we're either going to hear, "Well done, my good and faithful servant," or we're going to hear, "Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness." Which will you hear? That's the question you need to answer before you leave earth. And so this is a ministry of Bible Thumping Wingnut. Sorry about that. And there will be an after show that goes on for many hours. John will drop the link in here for all of us. We will drop the link in Mixler and keep that going, I believe. I will try to drop that link also in the YouTube channel. So John, if you drop that in YouTube as well. So just want to thank you. God bless you all.